All right, now that you've done some proofs of the properties, listened to some notes and done some practice, now we are going to do a formative grading of the proofs of properties. But I'm going to help you out a little bit in that I took care of all the ones that included some substitution. So I'm going to walk through each of these expressions, and then I'm going to ask you to pick which property did I use in order to come up with the next step in the solution process. So as you can see in this first one, they did the 4 to the second power and got 16. That was a form of substitution. I'm also going to give you a bonus, and I'm going to do the next one with you, because you can see they did 16 divided by 16 and got 1. Do you know what property that is? We've talked about it, but we never talked about it in the form of division. This would be an example of the multiplicative inverse property. Multiplying by the reciprocal is the same as division. So we would use this as a multiplicative inverse property. All right, so let's move on to the first one. What property says that 7 times 1 is going to equal 7? Now if we go over to number 2, they used substitution and got 15 divided by 3 is 5. Then from there they did 5 minus 5 is 0. What property is that an example of? The last step in solving this one was 2 times 0, which is 0. What property would that be an example of? In number 3, they started with 2 steps of substitution. The first one was the 2 times 3 is 6. Then from there, 7 minus 6 is 1. What property did they use right in here to get to this 3? If we go over to number 4, they started with substitution and did 4 times 2 is 8. Then what was the next property they used to simplify to this expression? For the third step, they did 4 times 0 is 0. What property is that an example of? The last step in this process was then to take 0 and add it to 1, and you still got 1. What property would that be an example of? In number 5, they used the substitution property and said 2 plus 3 was 5. Then 2 times 5 is 10. What was the next property that they used to simplify to this step of the expression? What property did they use to get from 9 times 0 to 0? And lastly, from 6 plus 0 to 6. The final problem here had us looking at, excuse me about that. Miss Wetland, what are you doing? There she is, back at it. Then last step here, they use 6 divided by 3 is 2. That's an example of substitution. 2 minus 1 is 1 as an example of substitution. Now what property did they use here to get down to this step? And lastly, what property talks about 2 times a half equaling 1? I'm anxious to see how you did. If you have questions or struggle with this, please let me know. Thank you. Have a great day.